My problem wasn't the cancer, it was the aloneness. And if I long for anything in my life, it's connection. I'm trained as a psychologist, and I've done 2 master's degrees and a doctorate. And in all of my training, telling your own story is like a big no-no. The whole purpose of this is hopefully to help other people feel less alone in these complicated moments in our lives, where we all let go of all of that fear and bullshit and just exist together as our most authentic, flawed, gorgeous, fucked up selves. When we can be ourselves, we have the best and most perfect chance at connection. I'm Sarah Schmidt, and this is Wholey Schmidt, Season 1. Hi, welcome back. It feels like every week I tell you how excited I am to share the episode that you're about to view, and this week is no different. Last week, I talked about and told the story of falling in love with Julie and coming out and building a family together with her. And I highlighted in a very particular way the support I received from my own family and how that just really bolstered our new relationship and helped us embrace what could have been a much more difficult time in our lives. I mean, we still had plenty of challenges, don't get me wrong, but the support that we received from our families did truly make everything easier. And so I thought it would be really interesting to bring my mom back on and talk to her about that. What did she remember? And in particular, what is it that allowed her to embrace us in such a real and loving way? Now, I am fully aware that my experience is not all that common, and that there are a lot of gay, lesbian, transgender people in the world who suffer loss when they come out to their families. But I tell my story with a lot of pride and a lot of hope. And so I hope, if you're listening and watching, that you see what is truly possible as someone who loves somebody who's coming out, that you see a path toward connection and a path for you to take that will allow you to unconditionally love them like I was unconditionally loved. So I invite you to listen this week with an open mind and an open heart. I invite you to think about how we can love without judgment, how we can live in a way where fear doesn't rule our decision-making. And above all, I hope you just enjoy listening to my mom be my mom. She's just an extraordinary person. So, Mom, I'm curious how you remember me coming out to you.
I remember being absolutely, totally surprised. Not a clue in my head at that point. My memory, and I think it's slightly jumbled at this point, is that you came home by yourself, and we were in the kitchen, sitting on the stools by that island peninsula thing that we had at that time, and you telling me, and Dad wasn't there at the moment, that you and Julie were thinking about living together, getting a place together. And I remember being delighted by that because had already met Julie a couple of times. We'd gone to dinner or lunch or something, and I just remember enjoying having her around. I thought she was just lovely, and I thought, yeah, this would be great. Sarah's got a new friend. It's going to be great. And so I'm saying something like that to you, and you say, no, Mom, living together, as in we're really going to be living together. We're going to be, I don't think you use the word partners maybe, but that it was bigger than just the two of you sharing an apartment. And it's like, oh my God, never, ever, ever dawned on me that you would come home and talk about something like that. I mean, it just didn't. Blew me away. But I also knew that it was just fine. I mean, I was surprised, but absolutely not a problem. I really and truly. I just wanted you to be in a good place. That's my memory.
I couldn't remember if I was in person with you or if I had talked to you on the phone, because Julie and I dated for about maybe a solid year, maybe more, before we actually moved in with each other. So, I mean, I get the jumbled part. It's very jumbled in my head too, but I remember telling you separately that we were going to be like a couple and date from our decision to get an apartment together. But my main memory from that is just how I was pretty nervous about telling you, and I felt like totally like it was okay.
It was for me.
And I also remember you, I mean, it was cute because you were like, well, I know Julie. I like Julie. Julie's great. Of course I can understand why. And I always had the sense that it was probably easier for you to hear this information because it was in the context of this relationship I was going to have with her. Not necessarily me just saying like, hey, I think I'm a lesbian and, that's how I'm going to identify. And, it was connected to, I really love her. And anyway, that's just my, that was kind of my take on it.
Yeah. I don't remember where Dad ever came into the picture. I don't know if he heard about it that same day or not. I think he would have been more concerned. And less, he wouldn't have, I don't know if he would have known what to say. I don't know what he ever said to you. I don't remember having any kind of a conversation with you at that point in time where he was there. But I know that he always liked Julie. That was never, I don't think that was ever an issue for him.
I think this was one of the few situations where you offered to tell him for me.
Maybe.
I think you did.
I don't remember.
Because I actually don't remember coming out to him or really having a direct conversation with him about it. I mean, I might have. I mean, we had conversations later, but what I remember is that like following summer, there were just all these moments where he was just really irritated with me about like everything. I remember I wanted to buy a new mattress, and he was like furious at me for buying a new mattress.
The old one was good enough, wasn't it?
Yeah. And then I was moving into this apartment, and I was moving into a different apartment, and I had the couch that you guys bought before you got married.
Oh my word.
That green thing. That green couch. And I mean, literally like, if you sat in the middle of it, you were okay. But if you sat on either end of it, you were going to end up in the middle. I mean, it was
well worn.
It was well worn. And I wanted to buy a new couch. And he was so angry at me for spending money on a couch. And I just remember him like picking at those little things. And in my mind, it was saying to me, like, I don't like the decisions you're making. But I can't really talk to you about the one that's really bothering me the most. So I'm going to...
We'd go to money. Yeah.
I'm going to go to we're going to argue about money because I can't really talk about the real issue.
Yeah. He didn't have a vocabulary that covered any of that.
He didn't. No. But I also never remember him... Like, I remember every time Julie was around, every time we were together, he was always positive and present and engaged as much as he could be, any of those things. But, I just felt like my coming out was almost a non-event, which I think is a really big deal.
Yeah. I don't remember any negativity or, just that word. I don't remember anything negative about that whole event. I just remember us liking Julie, and I was happy for you that you had this really special friend in your life, and it was good. I mean, it was just fine.
Do you remember talking to him about it at all?
No, I don't. I guess if I really, really tried to analyze the whole thing, I maybe could come back to a conversation somewhere, but honestly, I don't. I think he worried. I think we both worried because this was what year again? 1997? Yeah. It was a kind of an iffy world out there, even for women. For guys, certainly, but for women too. But it was much more common for women to live together.
Yeah, I think it was actually 96.
Sheer necessity. You know, it was a financial thing for them to share things together, you know, and work it out that way. So I don't think the world looked at women together quite the same as it would have with men living together. But always the idea that we wanted you safe. And I do remember having a conversation or two about that we just didn't want you to get anything that was nasty thrown at you.
Yeah. You know, I came out pretty quickly to like everybody. You know, once I clearly felt strongly about this, I couldn't keep it inside. I mean, I remember shortly thereafter going to visit Aunt Helen and telling her. And I think I remember Dad encouraging me to do that, or I don't know if he really encouraged me, but kind of, he knew I was going to go sit with her. And I remember sitting at her kitchen table. And I mean, sweaty palms, and I mean, nervous stomach and the whole bit. And I think she had already met Julie at that point. And I thought, well, this was going to be like the true test of it all right here, you know? I mean, every time I went to her house, she was praying the rosary. So there you go, you know?
They were well trained.
Yeah. And I just remember her listening, and you know, she wasn't like applauding, but she said something to the effect of like, well, if you love Julie, then I'm okay with that. Mm-hmm. And I get kind of emotional actually thinking about that, because every subsequent conversation I had or interaction I had with our big family just built this like inner confidence in me that I was fine.
Yes.
Like when you talk about safety, I mean, that's really where safety comes from, right? Knowing that people have your back.
Right.
And every conversation I had, people were just responded that way. Well, okay then. And it was really, I mean, it was so different than the experience that most of our friends had coming out.
I can believe that.
Do you remember being with Julie and I together, like in public, or when we were, you know, like now going to things together, or, you know, family events or whatever?
I don't know that I remember any specific one, but I just remember that it was just absolutely never an issue for me. I mean, I spent a huge chunk of my life with only women. And I was very comfortable around other women, more so than guys. And so spending time with you and Julie together was always fun. I mean, you were so busy all the time, and I just got to go along and do whatever you were doing. And I was always part of that. You know, I was just there with you, enjoying the moment. And It's more when you had kids already that I remember doing stuff with the three of you and really, really loving to see you parenting together. Going to the farmer's market with the kids in the wagon and even like we had graduation dinners with your siblings, and Julie was there. She was always just very, very good with us. I mean, we just really, I think we still do. We still really, really like each other.
Yeah.
I could always talk sports with her, and I didn't talk sports with you. Yeah.
No.
We didn't talk baseball.
No.
But we were able to talk lots of other things. I mean, we talked a lot of spirituality, and I think that was a big chunk of me, was realizing that the two of you were unconditionally loved by the God that was in my life. There was never, ever a doubt about that. And my church thing went by the wayside because that wasn't necessarily true about what was coming from the leaders of my religion at that moment. But I didn't believe that. You know, I had learned a whole bunch of years ago when I was quite a bit younger that God doesn't make junk. And therefore, this is good. This is blessed. This is holy. And so it was an important piece for me. And I just never had a doubt in my mind. I really didn't.
Yeah.
It was good.
I think it's really meaningful and important to kind of like highlight this, that for so many people, one of the biggest obstacles to really loving and accepting their gay or lesbian or transgender or bisexual or child is their religion. And a lot of people, I think, feel like they're forced to choose. And if their belief is that if they're not, doing the religion thing right, then ultimately they're not going to go to heaven. They are up against a rock and a hard place, and I saw this over and over again with friends whose families could not reconcile their religious beliefs with like true acceptance of their gay daughter.
Right.
Or, it was a tale that was told to us just repeatedly.
Right. Well, I think it's religion and society. And while you're talking about this, I think about my brother's son, who for years and years, we really kind of knew that he was gay, but it was never ever talked about in the family. And my family was certainly different than Dad's family from way umpteen different perspectives. But very, very quietly, I was finally able to have a little bit of a conversation with my brother and his wife, and the two of them, and how much we loved their son, and that was absolutely never going to change. And I think the fact that you were out there pretty loud. I mean, you were not being quiet about your relationship. I mean, you weren't certainly on a megaphone, but you were not quiet. And I don't know if they just didn't feel like they couldn't talk about it or what the deal was. I really don't honestly know, but I think that you maybe gave all of them a little bit more courage by being the person that you've been all these years.
Well, that makes me feel great.
Well, and I look at how proud they are of him these days.
Yeah.
Really and truly. And that's a good that came out of your relationship.
I also look at how connected, he is to his siblings and his mom and dad. And
yeah,
I mean, gosh, if that really is true, that me being unapologetic about who I was helped that, then that's just amazing.
Oh, I have no doubt about that, because we've had a bit of conversation on that topic.
I remember feeling like super supported by you, and I never felt a sense of being like self-conscious about being out in the world with Julie and I as a couple, like with you or even with Dad. I think around the time I was acknowledging like my 5-year kind of anniversary of like being done with all my cancer treatment. I want to say it was the 5-year, because we were going to have this big fancy celebration of the 5-year mark, because 5 years is big in the cancer world. That technically you're cured when you've been in remission 5 years. And I remember I made a 9:30 reservation. This was like an 18-course meal. I think Julie might have fallen asleep like around course 15 at the table. I want to say we got home at like 2:30 in the morning. It was the craziest, food that we ate. It was like foam and weird shit that you would, little tiny bits, with, fancy, this was like he invented that whole concept of dining. That was like, and it happened, in Chicago. And, I just remember being so proud of celebrating that with her and you, like we were a couple and we showed up with this little peanut, to Minocqua or to the house for holiday, whatever it was. And you embraced her.
Oh, that was easy.
Without question.
That was just so easy.
Yeah, that's true. However, there's so many people that can't do this. They just can't. And they're distanced from grandchildren and their own children and all these experiences.
Well, maybe I have had the example of my parents welcoming me home from the convent in my back pocket during those times too, because there was a woman who left right in front of me shortly before I did, and her parents didn't even let her come home. She had to get an apartment, find a job, had to be totally self-sufficient. So, not everything was good in the world. But my mother was very, very accepting of anything, the decisions we made, the stuff that was going on around us, her siblings, my dad's siblings, all of the family. So I had a really good role model in front of me in my parents. And I don't honestly think I even knew any other way of being. I mean, that was just the way it was going to be.
Yeah.
I mean, it was easy. It was really easy, actually.
And it felt that way to me. I never felt like this was hard for you.
No.
And that was a real gift, because I think I spent a lot of my life feeling like I was kind of a tough person, maybe too stubborn or too opinionated or too tall or too this or too that, too loud, too this, but this I never felt like was a too much thing.
No.
And I think it also led the way for Dad, because you didn't really open the door for him to be anything other than loving.
And he didn't want to lose you. That's another piece of it. He didn't want you going away in any way, shape, or form. And so, and I really don't necessarily think it was hard for him either. He wanted you safe, he wanted you happy, and he liked Julie. So what more did he need?
Right.
Really and truly. He probably didn't have a lot of good language to give you at that point, but he had good hugs.
You did. Yeah.
For both of you.
Yeah, and he hugged her too. He used to put his arm around her all the time.
Yep.
And I noticed as we were together longer, he got more and more comfortable putting his arm around her, in public.
Yeah.
I remember that, like, giving a toast at our wedding was it was a non-issue for him. I mean, he was just there, and couldn't have been happier.
I really liked the way she could tease him. She could give as good as she got. She'd give it back to him. So, if he said some goofy little thing, she had a nice comeback for him all the time. And I think that certainly helped him feel more comfortable. But I really didn't ever feel uncomfortable, honestly.
I remember him telling me about some sermon or homily that was given in church one Sunday where the priest was talking about the evils of homosexuality and was pretty overt about it. And he cornered him in the sacristy.
Yes, he did.
What do you remember about that story?
I just remember that. He was very vocal at that point, telling the priest that there's no way he could be saying that out loud like that. That just didn't work anymore in this world, and it certainly didn't work for him. And I don't remember the reaction that he got from speaking his mind, but it was good, it was clear, and it was totally honest and very loving. You know, he didn't get angry. He didn't get way too loud. He just made his point. And I don't honestly know where it went after that. I don't know if the guy actually did anything about the way he spoke, but, you know, he was giving the proverbial, what word do we use for that? Not the politics, you know, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you know, when you're out on a limb in the world, you know, and it felt like we were a lot, to have you guys standing up for us like that was, I mean, it was everything. And I talked about that last week in the episode, because I think the support that I experienced made doing some of these harder things much easier. You know, so when we decided to get involved in politics, or, you know, get working on bringing civil unions, you know, to Illinois, or, you know, trying to get Tammy Baldwin elected to the Senate, or those kinds of things, I felt this incredible safety net, and it made it a lot easier to, you know, to do all of that. I mean, and I don't know that, I'm not sure I realized it at the time, but that's what allowed me to take those steps forward.
Oh, that's good.
It is good. It was, I mean, it's remarkable, actually, especially when I think about, you know, Dad and how he was raised, and the really kind of insular life that, you know, that he lived. And I mean, the homogeneity in his universe was just remarkable to me. I mean, everybody kind of looked the same, and they all, like, you moved a mile away from where you were born.
Yep.
Yeah, I think it's kind of extraordinary. It felt extraordinary to me. It still does. And I remember as we were adopting, and as we encountered some of those challenges, I just had this sense of, it wasn't like I can handle this. It was a we. It always was a we. Like, we are going to do this. And that was everything.
Yeah. That was probably almost more scary for me than you and Julie being in this beautiful partnership. The idea that you were bringing children with a lot of diversity into your circle. And I worried way more about them, not because of the two of you, but because of the world that they were entering. And we still think about that. I mean, it's just so unfair that just because of the color of your skin, you're judged so differently. But, oh my goodness, we need to stop that. Stop that.
Yeah, I mean, I remember Dad having a really hard time with that initially, and I think I said something pretty clearly to him that went something like this. I think I said, you can either work on those issues that you have clearly, or you can be in my life.
Yeah.
You know, and he, you know, he chose me, and I think, yeah, I mean, he made that choice, and he always made it. You know, he always chose us.
Yeah, there was no doubt in my mind ever about his priorities with his children.
Yeah.
Always love, you know.
Yeah.
Pretty hard, but always done from a place of love.
Yeah.
Really.
I know he tried really hard.
He did.
Yeah. He knew he tried to love the best way he could. You know, and the way he was loved. So some of it kind of got lost in translation. It wasn't all that effective or appropriate, but
totally.
It was totally his best effort.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, I wasn't perfect either, so.
Well, we talked about that last time, and that wasn't the goal. You didn't need to be. It's all good now.
God. Put that old convent training to the side.
No. You know, if you were going to talk to parents that are having a hard time with their child coming out, or a hard time with, you know, maybe they don't know if they can go to the wedding, or maybe they just aren't comfortable being around the kids that have been adopted, or, you know, what would you want to say to them?
Oh my. Just love them. I don't know that I've got words that would be beyond that. I mean, do you want to be in their lives? Do you want to be part of their growing up? Do you I don't know how to put that into words.
Mm-hmm.
I really don't. It's so far beyond me even being able to understand how you can bring a child into this world and then not love their choices as long as they're decent choices, good choices. I mean, we certainly, no, I don't want to go rambling off in weird directions here. But if you love a child through their childhood and now they're making adult decisions, they need nothing but your support as long as those are good, decent decisions.
Yeah.
And, my mother taught me that you don't offer all kinds of advice ahead of the game. You don't push your opinion out there when it's not needed or asked for. And so I would have a very hard time unless I really had something specific to say beyond just love them, just hold them, and those little people that they bring into their lives.
Yeah. I was reflecting on our episode and you talking about being in the convent and this whole thing about not ever being able to have particular friendships,
God.
not two couldn't go for a walk.
Yeah.
And,
yeah.
You were during this like really critical time in your life, your adolescence, you were like, scrutinized and really under like incredible supervision around your relationships, at a time when you were supposed to be experimenting and, practicing and, you weren't allowed to do that. And I think it could have gone one of two ways. One, you either carried that rigidity and fear into your parenting, or you recognize that it was really not ideal, that it was quite harmful, and, embraced this, other way of thinking about things, which was, being really open-minded.
You need a comment from me on that.
Well, maybe. I don't know.
I think I was lucky that didn't get too ingrained in me. I certainly still have a bit of trouble having a lot of people in my life, but I really, really love the fact that I've got some particular friendships now that are so good. And so long-lasting. And I think I'm just really lucky that I was able to move out of that frame and into a much better place. And I think that was one of the reasons why I needed to not be there anymore, that I just couldn't do that anymore. I mean, to not have a really, really, really good friend that you could talk to about anything, wow, that's not normal.
Yeah.
And thank God that's not the way they live their lives anymore either. But, this was the 50s and 60s, so.
Yeah.
I was a mess in a lot of ways, and not just the convent.
Right. Mom, I think about people who, are very much committed to, one or two Bible passages that clearly seem to indicate that, homosexuality is a sin and it's wrong. And that defines their view on this, and it shapes their opinions, and then ultimately might persuade them, to reject a child who is gay. I'm wondering, your reading of the Bible never got in the way.
Oh, well, I don't read that stuff anymore.
But you did.
I don't know that it ever really stuck with me. I mean, I've always known that there's a historical tradition in the scriptures, and that what was said for the time, for the people of the time, has to always be taken into account. So at that time, women didn't count either.
Yeah.
Think about that feeding of the 5,000. There's a line there that says not counting the women and the children.
Yeah.
So, if someone who is attracted to the same sex can't be counted today, that's just a reflection of not understanding that Bible passage in its historical tradition. And I don't know how you really can explain that to somebody who says, nope, I have to take every word literally. The word is true as today, is as true today as, you can go back to all these rules in Leviticus or whatever that book is that gave the Jews all their things about washing dishes and everything else that they had to do. And do people believe that today? Do they believe all of those 600 regulations that are out there? No, they've adjusted their lifestyle. But there are certain lines in the Old Testament in particular that, and maybe in Paul's writings a little bit, that seem to give them ammunition. And I just frankly don't have any patience with that anymore.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
We have to look at this as 2,000 years ago, these words came to us, and some of them older than that. And my God, we've changed how we do math. But we don't change what's there. I mean,
we thought the world was flat.
We don't agree with slavery anymore. That's in our history. It's written. But we don't believe, most of us don't, hopefully the bulk of us don't believe in that anymore. But there's some stuff that really has got people trapped, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really difficult to debate this with a person who lives from a place of fear.
I can't debate politics either.
Yeah. I know. I'm not good at it either. Because at the end of the day, I'm like, how can you, no, it's just not right.
It's using my energy, and we've gotten nowhere. So I would love to see it different, but I really don't know how we fix it. And I don't think words fix it either. Mm-hmm. I think it's example that fixes it. One person at a time.
Well,
your relatives are really good examples of that, because without your modeling, I don't know that their heads would have been thinking differently, their brain, their minds, and their hearts. Anyway, their hearts.
I still remember, for a while, Julie and I were trying to have a baby, and I remember Uncle Art being like ridiculously curious about this, and he cornered me, and I forget where we were, at some family event, and he wanted to try to understand how we were going to do this. He needed to understand, like, her egg, your body, how will this work, and everything about,
You don't have a man.
Where's the sperm coming from? And he asked me all the questions, and it was without judgment. It was pure curiosity. And he thought it was the most fascinating thing at that time. I mean, and I remember him asking me how it was going and did it work? And I mean, he was born in 1926, and more Catholic than any Catholic I knew. I mean, I think he was more Catholic than the Pope, actually. And, and I felt so supported in that moment by him. And I remember that conversation, and it carried me. It made it easier to go through that difficult time. And then when we adopted, he thought that was amazing, and he celebrated that too. And when we got married, he was there applauding and standing, and somehow he was able to reconcile what he heard about homosexuality from the Catholic Church with the reality of me in a partnership, and he was able to love,
Well, and think about it, all of the cousins that were ahead of you, you three are the tail end.
I
of
know.
the whole group.
I'm number 37, I think.
Something like that. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So, I mean, and there was nothing, no leaders above that. I mean, that had never happened. They were all in traditional relationships, if we can call that traditional. Yeah.
Well, I so value, well, first of all, I like talking to you. And it's nice to be able to talk about this because you know what, today it's really great to just be able to maybe remember how well we did this. And
Kind of amazing, isn't it?
You really did this well.
Thank you.
Yeah. And
doesn't seem really hard in my memory at all. So,
well, that makes it even better. But, you know, supporting me in these moments makes it easier for me to live every moment.
Good.
I'm grateful. Good. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you for watching. If there's something you'd like to share, we'd invite you to drop a comment on our Instagram or our YouTube. Please join the conversation at Wholey Schmidt, WHOLEYSCHMIDT. And we also invite you to consider sharing your Wholey Schmidt moments. You can visit our website, wholeyschmidt.com, and click on the Moments tab. What are your aha moments? What are the moments that have shaped you, that have really transformed your life? We invite you to share, and we're excited to hear from you. Thank you so much.